This video will demonstrate the use of the TI-15 zonal rotor. This video is part of a class which includes a workbook. These, along with the rotor manual, provide instruction on how to use this rotor. First, let's look at some of the parts of the rotor we'll be using. This is the rotor bowl. This is the core, which is placed into the rotor bowl. This is the rotor lid. And this is the spanner that is used to tighten the lid. This is the rotor shield. This is the seal assembly. And the rotor cap. The first step in preparing the rotor for use is to inspect and lubricate the rotor. Ensure the rotor and core are clean and that the overspeed disc is properly affixed to the bottom of the rotor bowl. If the extrusion ring is installed, remove it now. Then remove the bowl gasket, being careful not to damage it. Lubricate the bowl gasket with silicone vacuum grease. Install the bowl gasket. Fit the extrusion ring over the bowl gasket. And lastly, lower the core into the rotor bowl. Place the rotor into the vise. Lubricate the metal lid threads with spin coat lubricant. Place the lid onto the rotor and turn it clockwise until just hand tight. Next, tighten the lid using the spanner until the index marks on the bowl and lid line up. Next, you will set up the centrifuge with the rotor. Turn on the centrifuge. Open the centrifuge door. Notice the drive spindle in the centrifuge, and also notice the support band. With instrument power on, lower the assembled uncapped rotor onto the drive spindle. Insert the rotor shield into the support band. Notice how the front latches into place. Turn the centrifuge key interlock to the zonal position. Set the required run speed. For this demonstration, it will be set to 32,000 RPM. Set the time, which will be 30 minutes in this demonstration. Also set the desired temperature, and set the centrifuge acceleration and deceleration to the fastest settings. Next, we will install the seal assembly. Hold the assembly in one hand and the tubing in the other hand. Lower the assembly carefully in a level, upright position, and then press it firmly into the rotor. Rotate the assembly clockwise until it stops and it will be locked into the rotor shield. Now we will prepare for delivery of gradient through the edge tubing. Open the three-way valve at the center tubing for waste collection from the seal assembly. Place the end of the center tubing into a beaker of water. During loading, air bubbles from this line will show that air is being displaced from the rotor as gradient is pumped in. Place the input to the pump into the gradient. In this case, this is the first sucrose gradient. The order of loading gradient is from low to high. Thus, start from the solution with the lowest density, that is 5% sucrose in this demonstration. Using the centrifuge's front panel, start the run. The rotor will accelerate to 2000 RPM and hold at that speed. With the rotor spinning at 2000 RPM, start the pump and adjust the flow rate to 40 ml per minute. Bubbles will now appear in the waistline from the center port. When each sucrose gradient is pumped into the rotor, the pump will be stopped, the next gradient put in place, and the pump restarted. This will be repeated until the last gradient is loaded and the rotor is full. When liquid begins to exit from the rotor, this can take approximately 40 minutes, turn off the pump. Remove the clamp from the waste tube and place it on the pump output tube. Fill a syringe with sample. Fit the syringe to the center tubing, avoid introducing air bubbles. Turn the three-way valve to allow the syringe port access to the center tubing. Slowly and smoothly deliver the sample at 15 ml per minute. Close the valve to the seal assembly. Fill a syringe with overlay solution. Fit the syringe to the center tubing and open the valve. Deliver the overlay at 15 ml per minute. An equal amount of solution will be displaced from the edge tubing to the waste. When you've dispensed the overlay, close the valve. Clamp off the tubing as close to the seal assembly as possible. Carefully turn the seal assembly counterclockwise until it stops. Lift it straight out through the shield and set it aside. To cap the rotor, simply push the cap into the rotor. The button should pop out. Check cap installation by trying to remove the cap without depressing the button. Remove the rotor shield and close the chamber door. The centrifuge will now accelerate the rotor. The vacuum system will come on automatically and time will begin to count. The rotor will accelerate from 2000 to 3000 RPM and hold until proper vacuum, approximately 750 microns, is achieved before it accelerates to the set speed, in this case 32,000 RPM. While the rotor is running at high speed, remove the clamp at the pump output. Put that clamp on the waste tubing. Place the high-density 25% sucrose displacement solution at the pump input. Place the entire seal assembly on the waste bottle. Release the edge tubing clamp. Turn on the pump. This will replace the gradient in the tubing and seal assembly with the displacement solution. When the tubing and seal assembly are full of displacement solution, stop the pump. Clamp the edge tubing as close to the seal assembly as possible, then set aside the seal assembly. At the end of time, or when the stop key is pressed, the rotor will decelerate to 2000 RPM. When the speed display indicates 2000 RPM, release the chamber vacuum by pressing the vacuum key on the centrifuge front panel. When vacuum is released, open the chamber door. Reinstall the rotor shield. Remove the rotor cap. Stop the cap from spinning, depress the cap button, and pull it straight up. Reinstall the seal assembly. Unclamp both lines to the seal assembly. Turn on the three-way valve to deliver the rotor's contents out of the tubing. Turn on the pump to deliver displacement solution at 40 ml per minute. The output of the rotor can now be collected into a clean container. When the rotor volume has been removed, turn off the pump. Stop the run. Clamp off the tubing as close to the seal assembly as possible. And remove the seal assembly. Remove the rotor shield. Wipe off the rotor and remove the rotor for cleaning. Place the rotor into the vise. Using the spanner, loosen the lid. Unscrew the lid by turning it counterclockwise. Empty the rotor's contents, wipe out the rotor bowl, and clean the threads of both the bowl and the lid. Disassemble the seal and clean it as per the rotor manual instructions.